Day, everybody, and welcome to the Wealth Academy podcast. So I'm quite excited today. I've got an incredible guest, who's been in the property space for a while now, quite well experienced, even though he's young. So yeah, I'm quite excited. I think this is going to be a cracker. We'll get to know who he is, what he does in the property space, and I think most importantly, what's his general message to people that are wanting to get into the property space, right? So I've had, numerous conversations with him. I've learned quite a lot, even though I've been in the space as well. And so I'm quite excited to introduce to you Winston. Winston, say hello to everybody.
Hi everyone, how are you? How are you,
Awesome,
brother?
man. Awesome, man. Awesome to have you here.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate the invitation.
Awesome. Man, you're doing incredible things. You are here, you are there, you are everywhere. So a lot of people probably wants to know who Winston is. So tell us who Winston is.
Okay. So my full name is Tembisa Winston Kunene. I have been in the property space for about 6 years now. And I started out so I've always been entrepreneurial. I've been doing entrepreneurship since primary school, high school, selling beverages. I've done a bit of fashion, so I've done quite a lot in terms of entrepreneurship. And I was fortunate enough to get a job immediately. I left school to be a receptionist for a recruitment company. So I got to learn how corporate works from there. And then I had an opportunity to join real estate, to be a PA for one of the top producing agents for Pam Golding Properties. So I got my training and experience from there. I worked my way up to being a qualified intern agent. And as obviously time went by, I got more accreditations to where we are now, owning our own real estate agency, Libertalia Group.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
that's
I've been fascinated, following your brand on social media, seeing a lot of agents affiliated to your brand. But before we get there, you said something right now. You said that, when I left school. So I'm sure a lot of people would be interested to hear more about that, So you left school. So tell us about that.
So I left school, yes, in grade 11, and went and pursued entrepreneurship. Did not sit well with my parents, of course.
I can imagine.
Yeah, but I suppose it's one of those entrepreneurial stories. You leave school to pursue a business. I must say a lot of things didn't work out when I left school immediately, so it wasn't as easy as it sounds. I did, of course, later on, I happened to take my NQF4 qualifications and so forth, because now what we're trying to do is to establish an education section. So it would be weird to promote educational courses, and yet the founder is not even educated.
Sure.
So yeah, eventually I did sort out my schooling criteria, but I did leave school, like you're asking. If you're asking, if I'm understanding what you're asking is how many people should be doing that, I wouldn't recommend it.
Sure.
Education is so powerful, and to be able to accumulate wealth, run a successful and functional business, you need education for that. And sure. I genuinely think it needs to be a very strategic decision.
Sure.
Sure, there should be self-belief as you start. There should be faith in yourself and all of that. But there will come a time where you will realize that research and development is actually what propels your business to grow.
Sure.
So yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So I always tell people, when I talk about my story, how I got into entrepreneurship. Like they say in wrestling, don't try this at home. So when I tell my story, I always say people don't try this at home, because you don't know what that decision actually cost me.
Yes.
So you might not have the grit that I had. You might not have the tenacity that I had. And so it has to be very, very personal. And it has to be, very calculated, because not everything basically works out initially the way you thought it was going to work out, right? But I like the fact that when you got a job, I think unlike people who just get a job for the sake of a salary. You got a job because not only did you want the money, but you also wanted to learn the corporate environment, right?
Yes.
And I think that's now paying off in what you are doing. So then after the reception job, you then went on into Pem Golding.
Yeah.
So I mean, what are some of the stuff that you learned there, and maybe even before going into that, what made you choose real estate? I know real estate. I mean, it's one of the biggest asset classes in the world, sitting at over $260 trillion value.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big asset class, right? And a lot of people do create wealth through real estate. But why did you choose real estate, and what was the experience with Pem Golding?
I like that your question had the answers. It's wealth creation. It's accumulation. It's progress, and it's there's a lot of money in the industry. Since we're talking about the numbers, one thing that really attracted me is when I read the stats on real estate. So we've got about 6.2 million residential properties in South Africa. That's a valuation of 4 trillion.
Wow.
And you look at the professionals within the industry, you only have 50,000 registered estate agents, which are now called property practitioners under the PPRA. So you're telling me that imagine each agent sold a house valued at 4 trillion rand. We're all sharing over 400 million.
Wow.
Individually. So I figured if this should be the space where you come in and you dominate. You dominate where you can, you learn as much as you can, just so that you can also accumulate that same amount of wealth that many other successful previous agents have. So I was very intrigued with the numbers, and I thought to myself that's the tenacity, the entrepreneurial characteristics that I already had is just confidence and wanting to win and wanting to sell. So I figured I would do extremely well if I joined that specific industry. And with the corporate experience, it helped as well, because when I started my own agency, I kind of knew how to structure processes and systems in place as well, according to the experience that I gained over time. So I think that was my definite entry to property. And I think being with Pam Golding, helped a lot. My business partner and I always joke and say, "Yeah, we'll take them down. But it's obviously all banter. But if you look at majority of the work they've done in the industry, it's very impactful.
Sure.
They bring in over 2 billion in revenue as a real estate agency. So I'm a big believer.
Is that annual or overall?
Annually.
Oh,
annually, yeah.
Wow.
So I'm a big believer for, competing and being exposed as well to such winners. Because if you see one person doing it, you most likely can and make it better. That's always been my sense of belief in obviously in the entrepreneurial space. So I was fortunate enough to receive a lot of training. They invest a lot of time and money in training.
Sure.
Hence, someone like myself who had gone into the industry with no, academic qualifications, managed to sell houses. Because remember, selling houses, you're selling people's most expensive assets.
Sure.
You're selling memories. So it's not just a sales job.
Yeah.
You need to know the processes. You need to know valuations, interest rates, how the economy works, how it affects real estate. What's the real estate market? What's the statistics behind that? So that's an educational process as well, which you have to go through. And that's definitely something that Pam Golding has given me during those training processes. And yeah, I think that's, I would, they always say it's a law of power. Don't go beyond your master.
Sure.
So always give credit to where it was given.
Wow. 48 laws of power. Right. So, I never told you this when we met. When I think it was 2010, I was still working. Right next to our office, there was a Pam Golding office in East London. And they were so busy at the time, and they were having all these show houses, but there were few agents to actually manage all the show houses. So they put up a post for someone who's going to be a show house sitter. And I was like, you know what? I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it for the exposure. I think it was 150 Rand for like 2 or 3
An
hours.
hour, yeah.
So, and I applied, and
Yeah.
they were intrigued, they accepted me, and I sit on a few show houses. So, it was quite a great learning experience, because I then went on, after that, to start my own real estate, got into real estate, and then eventually starting my own real estate practice. So, and I can imagine, I mean, you learned a lot from that experience, because let's face it, I think they're one of the best in the country, right?
Yeah.
And so they've really done a lot for the industry. Now, with all that experience, that then enabled you to start your own brand, your Libertalia Group. So we spoke a lot about you, Nomasi, before actually getting to meet you, because like, wow, who is this young man? They seems like they're doing quite well. So tell us about the process of starting your own brand. What was the experience like? Were you scared? Were you excited? And what were some of the lessons that you learned in the process?
So I'm a very, I like to put it out there. I'm a very impatient person, but I'm also very determined.
Sure.
So I wanted to start my own agency the first 6 months of joining Pam Golding, which was 5 years ago.
Wow.
I've only started the agency only 2 years ago. So basically, why I'm including this is because I had to try and find ways to get to that point, right? And I knew it was impossible without accreditations. You can't just go to the PPRA and register an agency.
Sure.
You don't have accreditations. You don't have experience, So the fortunate part about that is I then associated myself with people in the space, leaders of the space, and finding out more information, how they started their own agencies, and the processes around that. Obviously, when you go onto a website and you Google how to start your own agency, they'll tell you on Google, you need to get your NQF4, get your NQF5, register the agency, be tax compliant, you name it, which are things that I got to learn as well as going into the space. I then figured a way of building a brand as quickly as possible with minimum resources, social media being the biggest space. So I then partnered up with Keller Williams. So Keller Williams, of course, has this model where, especially if you've been an experienced agent, so it's not necessarily everyone that can do it, but if you've gotten quite a number of sales and experience and your profile is good, they will most likely give you a partnership deal whereby you can have your own brand accredited by them.
Wow.
So I then started Libertalia 2 years ago, Libertalia in association with Keller Williams.
Sure.
We then had the resources to hire our estate agents, which we still have today. I'm so grateful for the retention. We still have the same agents till this day,
Wow.
So, and we're just growing, we continue to grow. And majority of the agents we have are young as well. Most of them below 30. And the type of experience I got is the type of knowledge and experience that I'm now sharing with them. And we can see the results from the performance that, has been implemented on them from them. So having those resources really helped to where we are today. I know sometimes you might think to yourself, how can you build a brand? Get all these nominations, 40 under 40, Realtor of the Year, countless accolades, and yet you've only started this company 2 years ago. Of course, there's been experience, but it's also very strategic association, partnering, and actually going for the accreditations, because that's the end goal. Once you have your accreditations, then you're able to do every other independent deal, which is where we are now is Libertalia. We have our own training academy, which is accredited by Services CETA. We have our own real estate agency, which is accredited by PPRA, Property Practice Regulatory Authority. We have our own, we're working towards getting our own bond origination, which is now a partnership that we've recently established, partnering up with a bond originator to refer deals to the banks for properties.
Sure.
And then we've recently partnered up with a bridging finance company where we will be giving out, advanced commission to agents or even sellers that might need to either settle their municipal rates or their levy outstanding amounts while they're still trying to sell the house. So we've incorporated all of these processes, and I've only been able to do this recently because I finally got the independence I've always wanted.
Sure. Wow, this is interesting. So you were quite intentional from the word go. I mean, you you named your company Libertalia Group, not just Libertalia Estates, right?
Yes.
So that then gave you the flexibility to to keep on adding
Yes.
different components to the business as long as they are still within the space, which is quite interesting for someone your age.
Thank you very
And
much.
so I really find that quite inspirational. But then for people who are wanting to to get into the space, right? Because I mean, there is property practitioners, right? And there's also real estate investors. So we'll talk about those two groups, but let's talk initially about property practitioners. So someone who's looking at you, always thought to go to this thing of real estate is mainly for retired people, old tannies, old
Yeah.
omas, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's actually mainly been like that for years,
For
right?
many years.
Yeah, but now we're finding people like yourself and many other young people who are adding a lot of vibrancy into the industry, which is quite refreshing to see. Even for someone like me who's been in the industry for a while, so it's really refreshing. But what would be your message, for people that are the young people wanting to get into the space? I know there is also an element of, people that want to come into this. One of the things that I was actually told is that you should be able to support yourself at least for 6 months to a year without earning an income, because maybe sometime that's how long it takes for you to be able to start cash flowing. But generally, what would be your advice to someone wanting to get into this space?
Yeah, so that's actually a great question. So when we started the education section, our main purpose was not necessarily just being the leading, which is part of our vision statements, to be the leading, real estate and education and finance company in the African continent. But our mission statement is to empower those that are driven by education, opportunities, and so forth. So purpose, right? So education is literally the facilitator for that. And we thought if we're able to bring in these numbers, especially from the younger generation, because when you look at the unemployment rate, it's sitting at 34% now, I think. 72% of that are youth.
Sure.
So how do we then bridge that gap? Education. So we opened the education platform, whereby we would bring in the younger generation, especially the unemployed, preferably skilled. We would then put them on 90-day programs. So you can immediately pass that program. So your first 20 days, you can immediately become a registered estate agent, right? And then we would have problems where people would still need to learn before they actually get practical experience. So then they would go for the 90-day program. The strategy around that as well is you generally have to get your NQF4, it's subject to a logbook. So it's basically a portfolio of evidence. You don't have to get qualifications, because there's also this this assumption that I need to have a degree or I need to write a board exam before I actually start selling houses. That's basically majority of the people that we interview. Yeah, I thought this was very difficult. No, you just need a company to give you a letter of employment for you to then get an FFC, which is a fidelity fund certificate, for you to sell properties. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the road ends there. You then have to accumulate your portfolio of evidence. And your portfolio of evidence is the show houses, the administration work, having a mentor to walk with you when you're selling houses and so forth. And so using that to submit to the PPRA then allows you to write the exam and even start your own agency one day. So the possibilities are really there, and people just lack the right information. And that's the gap we're trying to bridge. Hence, we've had then the education section. I would extremely recommend any person to join real estate, because real estate is so diverse. Real estate is very different to being a doctor or an accountant. I'll tell you why. Because being a doctor, you need to go to university.
7 years.
It's fixed. It's fixed. 7 years. Okay, I suppose you know that. Yeah. So it's fixed. And then being an accountant, you need to being a chartered accountant, you need to write the exams after you've gone through university. So that's fixed. With real estate, you've got personal development from the day you start.
Sure.
And it's so diverse. The opportunity as so much that you can eventually become a property investor, a property developer. Conveyancing does require examinations, but you can get into that space as well of becoming, especially if you're going through the education route, the university route, becoming a quantity surveyor. There's so many things. You can become a plumber. You can service houses just as a general plumber, but you can grow your business from there as well, getting to know the real estate and having access to that sort of information. So yeah, I'm really, really for the personal development. You get to learn yourself, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, intellectually. You just grow as a person. Hence the possibilities are just explosive.
Wow. And then, on the money element, I'm sure a lot of people will actually be interested in that. Firstly, how long does it take for, let's say someone has got the right attitude, the right mindset, as far as, work is concerned. There's this thing about, entrepreneurs or entrepreneurial people. We don't run away from work. We run to work, right? And if nobody stops us, we'll basically work 24/7 if that was possible. But if I've got all of that, right, as a mindset, how long does it take generally for people to start earning decent income from real estate?
Real estate, I would say, like you said, 6 months, generally standard. If putting the scale on average, I would say 6 months, because the first sale you do, you'll only get to receive your money after 3, because it takes 3 months for registration to happen. So you can come into the industry and sell your first house. You still have to wait for 3 months for registration. But generally, people, hence, even with the incorporation of our 90-day program, right, it takes 90 days for an estate agent to really understand what their job is within the industry. And it takes also 90 days to experience all the failures. Before you get to realize that this is a routine that I need to adapt to for me to have a successful agent's career, So, and one of the reasons why I say that is because you look at your show houses, you're accumulating a list of buyers. So 3 months is enough for you to have a bigger database, enough to get referrals from, to get repeat business from, especially if we're talking about investors. It's enough to actually expose your personal brand as well. So having that then gives you enough listings as you continue to go along and you continue to be consistent. To answer your question, how long does it take you to make good money? I would say after a year. Because I started my first year, I had only done 4 sales in total. It was good money in terms of revenue, total, turnover. But the following year, things came a bit easier. So I started making 3 sales a month, and hence my desire for starting my own agency moved so quicker, because I then managed to also accumulate a number of properties along the journey. I accumulated other business revenue models along the journey. So that raised capital for me to also, start my own company. But I think for anyone in the industry, you still have agents that are 25 in the industry, 25 years in the industry. They just sell 5 houses every month, and they've been doing that consistently for the past 15 years.
Wow.
They make a living out of it. And it's possible. But if your dream is obviously bigger, then you get those agents, that want to take the risk of running other agents and or running other business models around that. But you can be comfortable in this industry.
Wow. I think I like the entrepreneurial mind. A lot of people that I've come across, they take being an agent or a property practitioner as a job, right? And that's the only thing that they're interested in. I just want to sell. I just want to list. I'm not interested in anything else that's happening out there. But you've really seen the bigger picture, that this industry actually has got a lot of facets, which are all contributing to one another. And you can do multiple things without necessarily taking your focus away from your core business. which is quite something that that is, I had a friend who wanted to get into the real estate space in Durban. And I said to him that you're going to have to be very strong mentally, because you're going to find old tannies who've been there for 10, 20 years, and they will tell you that this is how things are done here.
Yeah.
And you'll find that those people, they've been selling properties for 10, 20 years, but yet they've got no property portfolio of their own, because they simply take this as a job without necessarily seeing the bigger picture of really of using real estate as a tool for wealth creation.
So
True.
So
is that something that maybe you incorporate in a 90-day game plan? I'm talking about 90-day game plan because that's what we use in network marketing. But in your 90-day program, is that something that maybe you incorporate? Is that something you encourage? And also, do people have to pay for your 90-day program?
Yeah. So yes, we do put our courses are for sale. We've incorporated everything. So we've got the entrepreneurial section, we've got the property investing section, and then the general, property practitioner sales section. And so to answer your question, our program is 3,000 Rand. So once off 3,000 Rand, you pay that. And that obviously goes towards your license or your FFC and other running costs. So the risk mitigated with that is, like you're saying, it's such a difficult industry. It might look good for someone out there who's done very well for themselves, sure. But I can tell you there are many, many experiences, difficult moments and challenges they've had to go through to get there. And then you do get, people that get into the industry and they fail, they give up, it's too difficult, and then they obviously exit. So it's literally a cycle, because like I was saying earlier, that the level of entry is quite low. Anyone can actually join. Like your mom, your auntie can hire you. And you get to learn how to go about it. But then you do get people that really can't, sustain the challenges. So with that and our program, then what we do is we incorporate the entrepreneurial section, so that when you have challenges, you need to be resilient, because that's one of the quality traits of an entrepreneur. When it comes to things like investing, we do share that, because that's the end goal. You don't want to work forever. Financial freedom comes from real estate, because if you have a portfolio of properties whereby people are just renting and the properties are paid off, that's residual income coming to you that you even your children and your children's children and your fifth generation ahead will inherit, should you keep those properties, of course. So it's something to look forward to, especially as a young person. It's not a get rich type of thing, but if you build your portfolio for many years, you can have financial freedom. So let's take retirement out of the way. So we incorporate that into the training as well. And then, of course, the general sales processes, how OTPs work, how sole mandates work, how the industry is regulated, and so forth.
I think, when I still had an agency, that's one of the problems I had, because, as you say, the barriers to entry are quite low. So I had a lot of, turnover, people coming in, realizing, hey, this is not as easy as I thought, and then they're out the window. You spent all the time, your effort and energy in basically, incorporating those people into your business. And a lot of people don't honor that, right? So you spend time, it's admin intensive. Real estate is admin intensive, and a lot of people actually, overlook that. So, but I like the fact that, you've created a model where, at least you are increasing the barriers to entry in a way, so that people have got skin in the game, right? So if I put 3,000 Rand of my own money, I'm more likely to basically stay and see the whole thing through, because I've paid money. So that was I think that was a brilliant move. And then one of the things that I personally had a challenge with was when I was still an agent. I think the overall guidance, from the principal, they just wanted you to sell. What happens after that, that's none of their baby. For example, there was no accountant, to advise you how to make the most of your income, how to properly account for it, how do you run everything properly, so that you can get into a position where you can build your own property portfolio, qualify for bonds and stuff like that. So is that something that you, as you say, that you do incorporate the real estate education, investor education as well?
Yes.
But is that something that you incorporate, introduce them to professionals like accountants who
Yes.
can help them, maybe even lawyers who can help them set up their structures properly,
Yes.
so that they basically build, everything correctly from the word go?
Yes, that's correct. I'm so glad you asked that, because that's one of my favorite things that I've incorporated as well. So we have attorneys. So conveyancers would give us training on a monthly basis. SNN, I'd like to mention their name because they really do sponsor us as well. So they would do training on, just the general legalities. They even train on installment of sale agreement, which is something probably for another day
Sure.
to chat about. But it's like how you can actually accumulate wealth without putting money down. They've got trainings on that as well, and these are things that they have access to under our company. And we haven't had financial advisors come into the company, but we've had your bond originators, doing trainings for us. We would then give advice on financial management. We're not financially accredited to give that advice, but we do show the ropes, how we've made it, how we've budgeted for 6 months. It's a simple thing. Like, I'd like to put this example on the plate. So you would get an agent, especially a brand new agent that would come in, they get their first listing. Cool. I'm excited. Let's move on. And then I get my first inquiry. Cool. I'm showing them the house tomorrow. So I've seen it myself. You get excited. The adrenaline is too high. And then you start, maybe let's say the first 3 inquiries don't actually put in an OTP, and you've exhausted your fuel costs, your budget for your fuel, because now none of them have placed an offer, and you expected one of them to at least. So your expectations are there, but your budget is there. Sure. So the reason why I'm using this as a practical example is because you can minimize that cost by getting all 4 inquiries to view on one day.
Sure.
It's a simple financial skill, management skill to have is to minimize your consumption.
Yeah.
And maximize your turnover, your output. So we give them such advices, but yeah, just to elaborate on that.
Sure. I think for a lot of people who there's a lot of people who at matric don't know what direction they really want to take. Others have studied, let's say, for example, I studied quantity surveying, by the way, but I only worked like 18 months in the industry, and I just wanted to hustle. And, that's when I got, into real estate. I really enjoy the industry. I think in my career as an entrepreneur, I spent the most amount of years in real estate than anything else. Wow. But the question that I want to ask you is, for young people out there that may want to consider real estate as a profession, what would be your advice? Where should they start? What kind of mindset should they have if they really want to make a success of this? What advice would you give them?
Okay, so first one being that let's start with the financial. Because it's like I'm saying, a lot of people do come also into the industry and exhaust all their reserves and end up quitting, which makes sense because you've exhausted all your financial resources to continue running the business, because real estate is also a business. Sure. So I would advise that anyone that gets into real estate needs to have a budget in place for the next couple of months. If it's someone from matric, instead of not obviously promoting it, but if you don't want to go to university, that same amount of money that your parents would have spent on you getting a degree, ask them to invest in you in running a real estate business. You'll get your first sale within 3 months. You might even get all that money back from one sale.
Sure.
So I would encourage young people to, especially young people that would, once this is out, show your parents this specific video where I spoke about it, and me being a testament to the journey as well, is invest a lot of time and money into believing that you can actually make the first sale, because you just need one sale, and it's so possible because it's a numbers game. So I would like to encourage the youth to definitely look into that. And another thing that I would encourage the youth to look into right from Metric is, finding your purpose is so difficult. It took me quite a while. I haven't even found my purpose.
Sure.
Yeah, I know what I want generally. I'm very articulate. I'm very, I'm not as spontaneous when it comes to choosing what I want to do, but I am still trying to find myself within the journey. I think that's a long term.
Sure.
And we, as people, we just change
Yep.
every decade.
Yeah.
Every decade you want something else.
Sure.
You look at your business guys, your Jeff Bezos, they leave because it's their time is up. They've gotten into space because that's something different. That's their new purpose. So I think people shouldn't see purpose as an end goal. There's no destination to purpose.
Sure.
It's just a continuous journey. So get into the mindset for growth. If I come into this industry, yes, sure, I'll learn a few skills. I'll learn, which is what my last point would be. I'll learn a few skills. Maybe I'll learn how to acquire properties. Maybe I'll give myself 5 years. Maybe I'll find my purpose with trying that. If it doesn't work out, try something different. But for those that genuinely do want to get into the industry, you need, it's soft, both soft and hard skills, right?
Sure.
So time management is important because that you don't have to go to school for that. Just wake up on time and show up on time.
Sure.
You'll be surprised how many inquiries you can service just from being always on time, and how many how many consumers will give you repeat business because you've shown professionalism.
Sure.
Okay, that's just a basic one. Another one is preferably computer skills. Your spreadsheets, because you need to record your data. You need to learn how to study your data. You can't improve what you haven't measured. So if you don't have anything you've measured, you'll wake up thinking, this industry is tough. But if you actually measure your database, you'll realize I did 10 viewings and I got 1 sale. I could repeat the same process over and over again.
Sure.
So now you've got direction.
Sure.
So I think always monitor your progress. And the last thing I would advise for someone young is it's not easy. So don't come in. It's not a thing whereby by tomorrow I'll be a millionaire. It will take you some time, but you're so young. You have so much time, especially if you're hungry for knowledge. Don't just be hungry for money. Be hungry for knowledge, because if you're hungry for money, that's where generally people also give up. I didn't make the money I wanted, so this is not for me.
Sure.
Sometimes you just needed a bit of resilience and a bit of knowing how to make that amount of money that you've set for your goals, So yeah, I'd say the youth has so much potential. The youth are literally leading with social media. That's how we got our brand to where as well. I think I was talking to you as we're coming here. I was like, the crazy thing is my recent nomination was the 40 under 40 awards that's going to be taking place in March. So I'm getting an award, and someone asked me this. You're not really the biggest thing in the industry. How are you the only person that was nominated for that? That's because I mastered social media.
Sure.
And generally the younger generation can really, really master social media. So I think take social media management. Social media courses. How do you as a person expose your personal brand to people?
Sure.
If you learn that, you'll realize that every owner that wants to buy a house will just search real estate South Africa. Your name might pop up on page 1 to page 10 of Google searches. So how do you differentiate yourself between a 25-year experienced agent who makes over 700,000 per month to someone who hasn't made anything but they still pop up?
Sure.
So it's not that difficult to compete as a young person as well.
Wow. I think I like what, everything you've just said. Really amazing. I wish I was your age right now. When I was an agent, social media was there, but it was not as big as it is right now,
Yes.
And, so, I remember how I got my first sale. I got, I bought these SMS bundles. And, I SMS'd everyone, on my contact list saying that, if you know anyone who wants to buy or sell real estate, I've partnered with this company, please refer them to me, and that kind of message. And I got my first listing, from that.
I love that initiative.
Yeah. So I mean, you guys now have got social media, right? So it really levels the playing field because your old Tanis who've been there for a while, you know, for them it's quite an adjustment, right? They used to putting properties on the newspapers, right? Properties on Property 24, and I mean you've got thousands of properties, thousands of agents there, you know. But then social media, if you really master that, you can really differentiate yourself from the rest, and you've basically done well for that because I know you from social media as well.
Thank you. Yes.
So yeah, I really like that. And I think one of the things that I like about being an estate agent, you know, as compared to any other profession, maybe let's not even compare it, but the fact that as an agent, you know, you get to meet doctors, lawyers, engineers, accountants, everyone, business people, you know, people who are in the mining, people who are in logistics, people who are in real estate, people who are everywhere. So your network, you know, grows as a person. So even if in your next decade, as you say, you want to do something different, you've got all these networks that you've built over the years, which is quite fascinating. A lot of people don't really foresee that. And if anything, that should be the main reason for people to actually get into real estate, you know, acquire all these contacts, you know, get all these networks, you know. So, yeah, man, we want to appreciate you from here at the Wealth Academy. Thank you so much for coming through, and I'm sure this is just the first one that we're doing together. Maybe in the next ones we'll do quite a lot, you know, because our real goal and purpose here at the Wealth Academy is we want to educate people about real estate as an asset class. You know, a lot of our people, and this is what I enjoyed when I was still an agent, when I was selling a property to a young person, I spend more time with them, educating them. Don't look at it as a home. You're not just buying a home. You're making an investment here. And this is how you should think about it, right? And you should actually consider buying a second property, you know, if you qualify, and this is why. So I spent a lot of time, you know, with such people because I wanted to change their mindset, not to think, you know, as, you know, for property just a home, you know, and we'll stay here until Jesus comes or whatever the case is, you know. So I really, you know, admire the work that you're doing and that you've done, and I'm sure you can only grow from here, man. And all the best in the journey ahead. So thank you very much, guys, for joining us. We will be putting his contacts on the comment section, on the description below, so that you can follow him as well. There's definitely a lot to learn from him, even just from observing how he posts, what he posts, and how often he posts, you know. So there's a lot to learn, you know, even from that as well. So thank you very much for joining us. If you did enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. Make sure that you hit the notification bell so that you're notified of all the other videos that we're going to be doing, as we're going to be doing this quite often, making sure that you're educated and making the right decisions as far as investing into property, not only investing, but also, you know, possibly getting into the industry as a practitioner. Thank you very much. God bless.